Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? Geoff Mosher, Adam Caplan here. We are getting there through training camp. Adam, our last podcast was fun because we got to talk a little football, give our observations, or at least things that we've been hearing from our sources. And we're going to do the same, kind of a notebook style podcast today with a little bit more because now we've got two practices under the belt that were not in pads, but they were more of your 7-on-7, 11-on-11, like OTA like practice. And of course, this morning, Monday morning, is I believe the first that they can even ramp up from there.
Yes.
So we're going to start talking about that.
Pads today. Pads.
I know.
Yeah.
Isn't it weird? Isn't it weird? Like if we were doing this in a normal off season, right, or a normal preseason, you and I would be going through our observations of a preseason game by now, and then probably giving our listeners, 2 games, sourced intel on what people saw on the tape. And now it's really just coming from, NovaCare and only like kind of still scaled down OTA version of practices.
Yeah, look, we've got some good stuff, and then we're in a new reality here, Geoff. I could tell you back in probably starting 2002, probably through 2012 or 13, my goal was always to be at the first Eagles practice in pads. But this year, Geoff, because of the restrictions with the media, they're very limited to how many media members could go. So I'm only going to probably see 1 or 2 days, and you and I will still get information, which will be very, very good. But let's hope this is a temporary situation. Today's Monday, and the Eagles, and like all NFL teams, they could be in pads. But man, this has just been different for them. Like you said, we would be entering the third preseason week. Yes, right. Something like that. Third or fourth. There would be no more than third, but we would have had the Hall of Fame game already, the Texans and Chiefs. The Texans and Chiefs, Geoff, were the two teams that got to start early. All right. They're in pads a little bit earlier. Now, every NFL team, the other 30 teams, have the same practice schedule. And now they've got 3 weeks to be in pads. So things are different. There's no question about it. College scouting is different, Geoff, as you know. So this is what we're dealing with.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's just amazing because right about now is when we'd really start to get into the meat and potatoes of whatever job battles are up. And, there's really right now, it's really starting this week. I mean, as you mentioned, they get into pads. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to go through what Phase 3 means. We're going to go through what we've heard from the last few days of practice from an offensive and defensive standpoint, talk about any player injuries and things like that. And we're also going to finish it up, Adam, and I know a lot of people are wondering about this, so it's really important that we're touching on it. The Zach Ertz situation now in light of the contract extensions for Kittle and for Travis Kelce. So we're going to get all into that in this podcast. First, want to remind everyone to please check out our ITB television interview with Chiefs general manager Brett Veach. It was a great exclusive. We went through a lot of Brett Veach's building, him and John Dorsey building up the Chiefs, and Andy Reid, of course, and the drafting of Pat Mahomes, their expectations for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's very much like a Brian Westbrook type of prospect. So Eagles fans will be really interested in hearing that along with any fantasy football players. And then, of course, Brett's story of being a scout in the Eagles chain under Andy Reid and now a Super Bowl champion GM. I thought it was a fascinating interview. I thought we both asked really good questions, and I encourage everybody to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Inside the Birds on YouTube, and check that out. And then also check us out on InsideTheBirds.com. We've been pumping out some good content. Andrew DeCecco has been writing as well, so make sure everybody gives it a view and check that out as well. So let's get right into it, Adam. Let's talk about the last few days of Eagles practice because that was the end of Phase 2, and they were able to do more. And now they're in Phase 3. Starting Monday morning here. Why don't you go through what you know about what they can do starting today?
All right. So what happened was on Wednesday and Thursday, they started work. The veterans started working. It was actually Wednesday when they started working, and then Friday and Sunday they had Saturday off. Friday and Sunday were non-padded days, but you could do 11-on-11 and 7-on-7. So just talking to various teams around the NFL this past weekend, that was really when the competition started, really Friday. I was talking to a quarterback coach who was anxious to see the younger quarterbacks on his roster compete to see if they could make the roster as a third quarterback or just get a better view of these kids. And for the Eagles, let's talk about them, obviously, because this is what our show is about. this is when you could start seeing the veterans get in there, practice against the younger players, and just get the competition ratcheted up. Everybody knows, Geoff, about the DeSean Jackson video that Chad Johnson tweeted out. Even if you don't have Twitter, I know there's some people on our inside the Birds message board that there were a couple of people who actually don't have Twitter, which is hard to believe. I don't know how they heard about us, but it's all good. Yeah, you know
what they say: if it ain't on Twitter, it didn't happen.
Right, exactly. But the great thing is, and we'll get a little bit of practice intel. From what I understand, and there were 2 plays where DeSean looked incredible. He looks even better than he did last summer, and you saw how he carried that over to week 1, where the 250-yard plus touchdown catches against the Washington team in Philly.
Mm-hmm.
And ironically, they play at Washington in week 1. But DeSean looks incredible. And what you and I had told our listeners earlier this offseason, a couple of months ago, was that DeSean takes his fitness seriously. He has his trainer, who's a track trainer. And if you watch that video that Chad Johnson tweeted out,
mm-hmm.
you could see how DeSean's thighs have developed. Geoff, when you covered DeSean for CSNPhilly.com for several years, what do you remember about the body type? What do you remember about DeSean, the player?
I remember when he first was drafted, a lot was made. There was a national reporter who came to practice. And remember, DeSean came with a little bit of a reputation. He had a wonderful career at Cal, but he also had a reputation. You know, his kind of dad was very involved and very vocal with what goes on, and that he wasn't the hardest working guy. And I remember a national reporter coming to Eagles OTAs and writing a story about how DeSean was last in all the drill lines. You know, instead of being first, he was last. And I think what the reporter wrote was not necessarily completely in context, because DeSean wound up having a very, very good rookie year. I think he was almost looking for a reason to slam him. But nonetheless, it happened. But, you know, DeSean, the one thing that always stuck out to you was that he was just so small, you know, and you always wondered how he was going to be able to play this long. And
bony is what I call it.
He has, yeah. He was. I never, in my observation, never thought he was not a hard worker. I always thought he did work hard. Maybe not the hardest, but I always thought on the field, in practice. I tell you what really stands out. When they brought in Asante Samuel, he and Asante hit it off, and they made practice fun. You know, I mean, to have 2 personalities like that going at it every time.
Especially Asante,
Especially training camp, when it's you're closer. As a media member, you're on the field. You could hear the chirping and the talking.
Asante, dude, he chirped. Don't you remember when he called out Paul Domowitch? He go, "Hey, Domo, hey, Domo." Remember that? I was like, what is this about?
So the funny story about that, and it's pretty well known now, is that Damo wrote something that I think might have been mildly critical of Asante. I don't even remember what he wrote, but Asante did not like it. And Asante was all over him, as you were saying, one day in practice. And after every play, "Hey, Damo, did you see that? What's up, Damo?" Now he was being playful. Some people thought it was disrespectful. Some thought it was playful. You can draw your own conclusions.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, after that day, Asante Samuel learned that Paul Domowitch was the Philadelphia chapter representative for Hall of Fame voting. And I don't know if you ever talk with Asante, the one thing that he holds himself in very high esteem, and he feels that he is the best corner to have ever played the game.
He's not a Hall of Famer, no chance.
I'm just
good
I'm
player
just
though. Good.
Oh yeah,
very good player. But he's in that next tier. Okay, there's Hall of Fame, and there's that tier that guys won't get in. They're just very, very good football player for very many years. A terrific football player, no question about it. But
not to deviate, but it's a good story. I mean, Asante is from Florida, and his idol, the guy he loved the most playing that position, was Deion Sanders, right?
Oh, okay.
And one day when he was an Eagle, when Asante was an Eagle, Deion Sanders was on the NFL Network, and he said that he felt that Asante was the best off corner in football, which Deion thought was a compliment because he plays zone, he plays off.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, Asante Samuel took offense to this, and he went ballistic on Deion for saying that, because he felt like, you're saying I can't play man-to-man, I can't play press, I can't.
Oh, I remember this
anybody.
now. Okay, I do. Okay.
To the point where he was basically trashing his idol. I mean, when Asante got mad, he'll let you know about it. So anyway, to go back to Damo, once he found out that Domowitch was the Hall of Fame voter for Philadelphia, he was so nice to Paul.
I knew it. I knew it. It's funny. I didn't know this story,
Uh-huh.
but as soon as you started hinting at it, I figured he flipped.
And he
That is
was
so
nice.
funny.
And it was a
So
very
funny.
typical Asante. He'd be like, "Hey, Damo, I got to be nice to you now, right? You're the Hall of Fame voter. I'm gonna
Did
be
he say
nice to you
that?
now."
Did he
Oh
say
yeah,
that?
yeah, he
Oh
did.
my God, that's
It was
hilarious.
very funny. It was very funny. But I guess
Wow.
what got us down this Asante Samuel? Oh,
But
Asante
no,
and
with
DeSean.
DeSean. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's good that
But
DeSean left
but
too.
but I will tell you, this is one of the many reasons why Chip Kelly didn't want DeSean on the team.
Mm-hmm.
Chip's first year, 2013, he wanted this situation where guys understood how fast this offense had to be, and there was no huddle. So you had to run back to the line or jog. DeSean would walk back, and it drove Chip crazy, according to one of the coaches who told me about it.
Yeah.
And if you look at the litany of issues that Chip and DeSean had with each other, from Chip's side, it was a lack of hustle, and there's some other stuff. But the fact that drove Chip crazy because his offense was all about speed.
Yeah.
DeSean, obviously, by the way, DeSean played damn well for Chip. Really had a career year. But anyway, DeSean at 33 years old, the way I hear it, has never looked better.
Mm-hmm.
So those two clips you saw from Chad Johnson are indicative of how great he's looked. And, you look at his contract, you go, how in the world, with all their cap issues, and this is not a cap show, we'll deal with this. We dealt with it earlier in the offseason.
Mm-hmm.
But Geoff, if this guy plays 12 games, he's coming back next season. This kid, he's healthy. The hamstrings are great for now. He takes his fitness seriously. If he could just be careful with social media, Geoff, I am not ruling out him if he could play just 12 games. Now, they would have, I don't know if they're going to want to pay him $8 million, which is make it over $8 million next year. But
yeah,
he is still one of the two best deep threats in NFL history. Randy Moss being the other, and Randy Moss didn't look this good at 33. I don't know about that.
I haven't heard DeSean openly talk much about the Hall of Fame and whether he feels he should be in it, wants to be in it. I mean, everybody wants to be in it, but he's not like Asante Samuel where he openly campaigns for it. But to your point, his numbers, especially his deep touchdowns, they're very unique. And I don't know that they're Hall of Fame worthy because he's playing in an era where there's just so many 1,000-yard receivers and so many guys. But he has compiled over a decade now a lot of receiving yards, a lot of touchdowns, and a lot of catches. So I don't know where it stands or when he finishes his career, where it's going to stack up. But I wouldn't be surprised. You'd have to look at his numbers and compare him to Lynn Swann, right? Lynn Swann's in the Hall of Fame, but they never threw the ball.
Fifth big plays, 50-yard plus touchdowns is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Just think, Geoff, if he didn't have that hamstring injury, excuse me, the groin injury, he had the sports hernia surgery.
Right.
If he didn't have that, and who knows how many games he would have played, though maybe it was a hamstring he would suffer. But the fact of the matter is, I'm pretty certain he got hurt against Washington.
Mm-hmm.
The game where he had the 2 50-yard plus touchdowns. And he didn't play. He played one more game against Chicago. He was out after, was it 3 plays and he got hurt and that was it. Yeah. Just think of how good this offense would have been if they would have had him last season.
Yeah, well, I have some notes on that when we talk a little bit about the offense later. But I agree with you. I mean, they were pretty prolific in the game one, and then they were a whole lot different when he was out. Let's continue just on phase 3, right? Let's go through what they can do because I believe practice will start off at 90 minutes on Monday, right? But then it gradually increases by 15 minutes per day until September 6th. Until they get to
It's the last Sunday before week 1.
Right.
So basically, the way it's going to work is this: the first 2 weeks of training camp are going to be in pads. The third week, they may or may not be in pads. You only have 14 days, but that will be actually a transition to week 1. I think, if one of the coaches told me correctly, you're turning the page because remember the 4th preseason week, Geoff, is your game planning for week 1, and obviously you get to week 1 in the next week. So you really only have 2 weeks to really now get real competition. It is what it is, and you struggle to see. I don't know how these young players, 6th, 7th round picks, undrafted free agents with NFL teams, Geoff, are going to make it. Because they're just not going to get enough reps.
Right. No, that's true. That's true. It'll be interesting to see how that kind of unfolds. They're allowed to be in pads from now until the September 6th. Doug has already come out and said he's going to have 2 practices where they're tackling to the ground. Now, that doesn't mean he can't and won't have other practice where they're in pads. Thud, right. Yeah. Which is like
with the elbow. Yeah, I used to love.
Yeah, I always try to figure out a way to describe thud to people. It's almost like everything up until the point of tackling.
Yeah, well, I love the first time I saw it a couple decades ago. They don't really tell you anything. You have to ask questions. I'm like, okay, why did that guy not take him to the ground, but he gave an elbow, or gave him a fist, he pushed him? Well, you just said it, Geoff. You can't take him to the ground, but you make contact. And the big thing is an elbow or a forearm. And it's just kind of funny to see that. But and you'll see they'll come right at him, and they'll do all they can to have some contact without taking him to the ground. So we call it the thud period. Right. And then there are going to be periods where they hit. But the difference between when you and I first started covering league to now is the hitting periods are not 15 or 20 minutes. They're like 3 to 5 minutes. It's kind of a joke. It's a lot in goal line too, but it's nothing like it was when I first started covering league, man. It's kind of like, okay, we want to do hitting, but we're not going to do it for very long.
Right. You just hit on it. I think the last few years, most of the live tackling practices that I've seen have not been normal scrimmages. They've been a lot of situational, like you said, goal line, a little third down, 4th and 1 type stuff where you really have to get physical and you're trying to move that chain that 1 or 2 yards. But it's not necessarily from 20 to 20, as we like to say. So, yeah, I agree with that. So what do you think – what are you told about what the teams, with the Eagles or any team, really can learn up till this point?
All right, what do they learn? Right, because there's no tackling. They weren't in pads. The teams are allowed to do 11-on-11, 7-on-7. You could see for the rookies, let's say at receiver, right, or the second-year players, you could see their route running. You could see their explosion. Did they look like they did on college tape from an explosion standpoint? Did they carry out their assignment well? Were they running the right route? If not, let's say it was Aaron Morehead, the receivers coach. Was he able to correct it? Obviously, they have post-practice time when they're watching film, and they also have their off-season program where they were not on the field, but they had the Zoom sessions for several weeks. But this is the first time in Phase 2 on Friday and Sunday, Geoff, that they could actually start seeing, okay, there's some competition here. They could start measuring, okay, does he know what he's doing? Is he carrying it out? They're not worrying about tackling because you can't. They're not worried about being in pads. They just you don't want to go overboard with it, especially with offensive linemen. You can't hit anyone. Right. You really can't judge offensive linemen very much. It's really for receivers, running backs, and we'll get to Miles Sanders in a second. And then corners, are they covering well? Are they line up correctly? Do they have the right coverage? They know what they're doing. Just carrying out their assignments. Sure. You don't want to go crazy with this stuff because when I hear stuff from people around the league, they always say don't go crazy with this stuff because it doesn't mean a lot. We're not making hard judgments. We're starting to learn some stuff because the kids have to know what the heck they're doing. But and by the way, not everybody's practicing. I know Jason Peters, I think it was Sunday, didn't work. I don't. Teams do not tell. They don't have to tell you whether guys have an injury or not. You could ask if they had practice or not. But I know you had reported that who was it? Dillard had a knee injury or something.
That was a minor knee thing. Yeah.
Right. I'm told he was back Friday.
Oh, good.
And he did work Sunday. I don't. With offensive linemen, I have no idea how they're doing. I just know whether they worked or not. But and I have no idea whether it's a veteran day for Peters. I have no idea because they don't. Again, they're not telling us whether the guy's hurt or not. So, and by the way, when this week when reporters are there, they'll note it. You'll see it all over Twitter who didn't work and who didn't. Not really a big deal, but it becomes a big deal because here's why it was a big deal last summer. I didn't know it until I reported it about Goddard. I didn't know that he had a calf injury. He suffered on, I believe, the second day of training camp. And that is the reason, Geoff, that he struggled in the first half of the season. Because if you remember, he injured it against Atlanta. And did he play in that game? Was it warm-ups?
I thought he got hurt in that game, right?
Or was it warm-ups or did he even play? I don't remember.
No, he played in that. I think he's not the one that was Alshon and DeSean that got hurt. He got hurt.
But he got hurt in that game. Yeah. And that was the same calf strain. Yeah.
I think he missed the next game the Lions game, if I'm not mistaken.
Sounds right. Right, and he clearly was not right. He had pretty decent calf strain. It just wasn't right. So you got to be careful with these injuries, certainly in training camp. So they're in phase 3 now. For the 17th, and the last day is the 6th, is that Sunday. They can hit 14 padded practices, and as you said, Geoff, it's 90 minutes and they could increase daily. They will get some days off, no question about that. But
right.
Look, now the competition phase, real phase in pads. The coaches now are on the National Football. They're going to start really learning. And you know what? They only have 2 weeks, Geoff, really, to figure out who's winning jobs and who's not.
Yeah, a source of the team explained to me that this is going to be the most critical evaluation time that they have these next 2 or 3 weeks. As you just mentioned, it's been good. Right now, they've been able to see who understands the playbook, who can carry out the playbook onto the field just from an assignment standpoint. Do you know where you're supposed to be? Do you know your technique? Do you know this and that? But of course, the real evaluation as far as, and we'll talk about it a little bit, as far as job battles, right? And who should be playing what positions when is really going to start. That evaluation starts today. And to go back to what you said, Adam, because there was a little bit of a reaction to it. You can't put anything into the DeSean Jackson, Darius Slay video that Chad Johnson leaked, thanks to DeSean Jackson.
I'm so glad he did, though, because that was really good stuff.
Yeah, it was good to see something, right? But I will say you can put into this. You did see what I would call a nice delayed release on DeSean. Right off the snap, he kind of suckered Darius into not giving away the route because he didn't really explode off scrimmage, and then he did. And then you saw him use his left hand to kind of swipe away Darius's jam attempt. So that's good. Good hand usage by DeSean. Good release, but you would expect that of a 33-year-old veteran, that he knows what kind of release and hand usage to do. But to people who are saying that this is a bad sign for Darius Slay.
It's not, by the way.
No pass rush.
By the way, apparently Slay looked damn good.
Uh-huh.
The rest of the 2 days, I guess, Friday and Sunday, just from what I understand, Slay was tremendous.
Nice.
That's all. There's not a lot to glean from these situations, but you're looking to make sure for DeSean first that he's back all the way from his surgery where he had both sides of his groin area repaired, and he's doing great. See, here's the thing before I get to Miles Sanders. Players had nothing else to do this offseason other than spending time with their family because they couldn't go anywhere.
Right.
So DeSean was in Tampa. You've seen the videos. They're out there on social media. He's trained his ass off, and he's probably in the best shape of his career because all he could do is train.
Right.
And you see the two plays, the hitch route and the stop and go, and he got it done. There's no question about it. Now, Miles Sanders, I don't want to go too crazy. He's a running back, so you can't really touch him.
Mm-hmm.
Can't really make contact, but people around the team have noticed this. It's kind of like he knew in March, once not Darren Howard. God, why do I always call him that? Jordan Howard. Darren Howard is a former defensive end for the Eagles, but once they knew that Jordan Howard was not coming back, it's like Sanders knew, Geoff, that was his message. You're the guy. Mm-hmm. He's taking it seriously. He trained out in L.A. and I think somewhere else around the country. And people been around him say that it's just not that he's a new person. He gets the deal. He understands you're the guy. Handle yourself the right way. Mm-hmm. And we're putting a lot on you because you're special. And apparently, whenever his name has been called in the passing game, he's looked incredibly explosive, even more than last season. And you saw how special he is with the 50 catches. And for those of you who have brought this up to me, and I think it's just complete nonsense, so I'm going to address it. I didn't even answer it on social media. People play fantasy. Like one guy said, well, the only reason why I caught all those passes is because Jeffrey was hurt, Jackson was hurt. Okay, I get what you're saying, but it's not like they're going to, like Jeffrey could be back in, as we reported on our show, maybe first month, we'll see. Mm-hmm. DeSean's back, and Goddard's healthy, and Ertz is back. Well, he'll only catch 25 passes. No. They found something special here. You don't go away from that. Are you kidding? He will destroy linebackers, okay? You see Alvin Kamara, what he does when he's healthy. He had a knee injury last season, but Miles is pretty damn special, and I don't think the Eagles had any idea he was this good in the pass game.
Well, that's good. That would validate what you and I have been saying for quite a while about, A, the need for a player of Miles Sanders' caliber, and then after last year, what we've seen in Miles. And, Brian Westbrook has been on with us and has said it as well. So that's always good news. I want to get into more of what we heard on some of the offensive players and defensive players, Adam. But first, got to tell everybody about our new partner that we're planning to do some really cool stuff with throughout the season. We're teaming up with Philly's own Stateside Vodka. It's the fastest growing craft spirit in Pennsylvania and the first vodka on the market to actively hydrate the consumer with an electrolyte composition. So what's better than this?
Ooh, I got to do this. All right, I got to get a
right?
bottle because I like vodka. And now when you tell me with electrolytes, man, I mean, I could be hydrated properly instead of drinking water. No, I'm just kidding.
Who knew?
Yeah, exactly. It's awesome.
You can drink vodka and still be hydrated.
I love vodka. Get my screwdriver going.
So Stateside's headquartered in Kensington, Philly, and it's 7 times distilled, certified gluten-free, and top-of-the-line premium vodka. You know that we love supporting Philly and locally owned businesses, which is why we're really excited about Stateside Vodka. So next time you're thinking about Tito's, which is operated in Cowboys country down in Texas, you got to think to yourself, do I want to support the Eagles or the Cowboys?
Funny.
You know the answer. There's no better vodka than Stateside. It's award-winning, and it's Philly produced. So go to statesidevodka.com for 10% off the best vodka out there with promo code BIRDS on pickup or delivery. That's right. They deliver to Philadelphia County, Chester County, Delco, Montco, Bucks County, Westmoreland, and Allegheny. So if you live there, go to statesidevodka.com. Get your 10% off a pickup or a delivery by using the promo code BIRDS. Remember, supporting Stateside is also supporting Inside the Birds. We've got some cool things cooking with a fantasy football league for our ITB faithful, and we're excited to kick things off with Stateside. So remember, promo code BIRDS for 10% off Philly's own Stateside Vodka. All right, let's talk a little bit more about the offense. We just gave you some stuff on Miles Sanders. We talked about DeSean and, what we expect. I'm hearing some positive things about Aaron Morehead, Adam. I imagine you might have been also.
Yeah, I just know that I talked to Sony, coach with at Vanderbilt, and spoke the world of Aaron. He's got great command. It's not a secret if you watch his media briefing. He has a relationship with Jalen Reagor that goes back, well over a decade because of his relationship with his dad, Monte. They both played with the Colts. So you would think that it's actually a good thing because if he's got to ride Jalen Reagor, if he's not having a good practice or didn't run the right route, he knows how to handle the player because he knows it.
Right.
But the key here is I'm not worried about Jalen Reagor, although he's a rookie. I'm worried about guys like J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who really has to take the next step. The young guys like Quez Watkins and John Hightower, those are the guys who need to be coached up hard.
Right.
Because quite frankly, with Jeffrey coming back from major surgery, DeSean coming back from surgery, these are older football players. No one could say for any certainty how many games they're going to play. They're going to need these young kids to play. And without an offseason, no preseason, Morehead's up against it, man. He's going to be tested. This is a big deal for Aaron Morehead, a former Colts receiver who coached at Texas A&M, and Christian Kirk, the former Texas A&M receiver, spoke very highly of him. But Morehead's got a big job, Geoff, ahead of him.
It was interesting because Morehead mentioned that he had tried to get Reagor to come to Texas A&M when he was
I'm surprised
there.
he didn't.
I know. Obviously, he went to TCU.
Yeah.
And had a great career there. I thought it was also interesting that he talked about cross-training receivers because that's what they've kind of normally done. And then it seemed, and I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth, but it seemed like Doug was saying earlier, maybe a month ago, this may not be the case where you'll have one guy, you'll have Jalen, for example, learning Z, and having to do that first. But you and I have known quite a while that they want to move guys around, and it sounds like they're cross. I've already mentioned last podcast that Jay Jaw was seeing some time in the slot, and Reagor is seeing time at X, and I'm sure they're going to get him all over the field too.
Yeah, I think you told us that they're going to move Reagor, they're going to move Jay Jaw. That makes sense. I just still cannot believe that they're going to line him up at the slot. We're talking about J.J. Arcega-Whiteside.
Yeah.
I like a little bit more suddenness from the slot receiver. Now, you had mentioned through your sourcing that you had heard that a little bit.
I guess because J.J. Arcega-Whiteside looked good, shades of Jordan Matthews when Matthews was a pretty high-level football player. Now, if he's even a shade of that, they're on to something with this kid. Wow. I never – tall slots you don't see very much. Usually your slot receiver, Cooper Kupp is probably the tallest guy at 6'1.5", but they're typically 5'8" to 5'11". So we'll see. And Reagor clearly could play in the slot. And obviously Greg Ward. Now, I guess Doug Peterson was asked about Greg Ward being a starting player. Well, folks, the Eagles are a 12-personnel team, not 11. They'll play 11 when they have to, but they're with Goddard and Ertz there. As long as they're there, they're a 12-personnel team, which means 2 tight ends, 2 receivers. So that means Ward's not going to play a lot unless they're in a pretty significant passing situation.
Right. I like Greg Ward, and I understand why Doug spoke him up. I think it's good because with so much uncertainty, Greg Ward might be your slot receiver in 11 personnel. But I'm obviously there are guys that they would like to see succeed ahead of him, but you just don't know if they will. So I do think Doug sees him as a leader and sees him as a guy who really helped them, as you mentioned last podcast in December. What would they have been without him? But the reality of a guy like Greg Ward is the reality of a guy like Greg Ward with his pedigree is that you're always trying to get better. And the Eagles hope that they've found young guys who are better, but we don't know.
Well, here's the thing, though. He knows the offense. Remember, he's been on and off the roster for 3 years. He knows the scheme. He knows the terminology. He knows Carson. He was indispensable late last season. He was just tremendous. And, yeah, he's not fast. Yeah, he's small, but he gets open. He doesn't drop the football. That's saying a lot for a guy that has not been playing receiver very long, a former college quarterback at Houston. So that's good there. And then, offensive line, Jordan Mailata, you came off the COVID list. I'm told he did practice. That's good. So now, Geoff, now they're in pads. They've got 2 weeks to figure it out with this guy.
Well, yeah, I feel like by the next podcast we're going to have a lot more on the offensive line that we've been able to give up until now. I mean, all we can say is I know that Jack Driscoll is a guy who's really appealed to Jeff Stoutland. Jeff Stoutland has been a fan so far of Jack Driscoll's development. But let's put the pads on, because the one knock on Jack coming out of college at Auburn was that he had to put weight on. He's going to struggle against really big, strong guys because he himself needs to get bigger and stronger, which is very common of offensive linemen anyway who are drafted, especially those drafted second, third, fourth, and later in the rounds. But you and I know when you impress the coaches, take TJ Edwards last year. Was he the best athlete that they had at linebacker? No. But did he impress the coaches enough to be able to make the team and to make an impact? Yes, because the door wound up opening for him. So we'll have to see how Jack Driscoll does over these next week or two. But I would tell people to be, to kind of like monitor it, listen to what we say, be encouraged by what you've at least heard so far from Jack Driscoll.
That's it. Look, he's a 4th-round pick. If he could be the swing tackle, well, he can't play left because he's not long enough. But if he could be the backup guard, both guard spots, or I know Pryor's there, but Pryor might be the backup tackle. But if Driscoll could dress every week and be a 2-position player, that's a home run as a 4th-round pick. That's exactly what you're looking for. And then once they think he's comfortable, remember, Peters is highly unlikely to come back after the season, but you never want to say never. Brooks should be back next season as a starter. They owe him $10 million anyway for next season, so he might as well be back. And if he could do that, if Driscoll could be that top backup, that's exactly what he was drafted to be.
How many linemen did they keep last year? I'm trying to remember coming out of camp. Was it 9 or 8?
Well, Herbig made it. Okay.
Right.
Herbig, Pryor.
Big V.
Big V,
Pryor.
Right? 8 or
6,
9?
7, 8.
Was Suapetto on the team? I don't remember.
No, he did not start off.
Okay.
He got promoted because somebody was going to sign him.
So, okay.
So Herbig made it, right? Because he's
Mailata. Yeah, they had 9.
No, wasn't Mailata on IR?
Oh, yeah. You're correct.
Right. So they really it was 8. I'm wondering if this year they keep 9 though, because A, they've got a pretty decent amount of talent, and B, Jason Peters' age. Well, actually, not just Jason Peters, but you got Peters, who has a history, who's obviously 36-year-old and banged up, but Jason Kelce's 33, Lane Johnson's 30. I just wonder if they look at the overall age of the starters and say, you know what, we may want to have another one other guy because the guy's good enough and worthy to keep. So you keep like Matt Pryor, you keep Mailata, you keep, say, Herbig and Driscoll, or maybe it's just Driscoll. Maybe they just go with 8 and those 3: Pryor, Mailata, Driscoll.
Yeah, but who's your backup center? Who's your backup center?
Well, I guess you could slide Sayamalu there, but you're right. They don't always love to do that. That's a good point.
Yeah.
I guess maybe. Well, then that goes to my point. Do they keep 9 to keep Nate Herbig on as a backup center?
Well, I would think it'd be 8 or 9. Wanago's not making it. He's a project, and. Right. Yeah, no, but remember, they have not put Brandon Brooks on IR yet, so he's still on the roster.
That's
and
true.
Look,
he go ahead.
Look, I'm just telling you, and I've seen this happen before. If they think a guy can come back for the playoffs or has a chance to, why put him on IR? So we'll see. knowing the
Wow,
way this
you
guy
think he could
rehabs.
come back in the first 6 weeks, though?
No. I said
Oh,
6
okay.
months. 6 months, I said. Within 6
No,
months.
I'm just saying, though, why wouldn't you just put him on IR with a chance to return? Because that would only keep him out 6
they
weeks.
can. And I have to see with the new CBA how many they have. Because who knows who needs to go on that. Right now, they don't have – DeSean Hall's the only one on the reserve list. DeSean Hall, if you remember, was cleared waivers. So I think – wasn't he cut first? I thought DeSean Hall was cut first. I thought he was wave injured, something like that.
No, DeSean Hall made the team.
No, I'm talking about this year. He was wave. I was right. He was wave injured. Failed physical, and now he passed through his own PUP. So, anyway, getting back to the Eagles situation now. You want to go over to defense?
Well, I want to make one more point on offense because this is something I was told, and I think it's a really good observation because we've brought it up a lot. This is the second time I've heard it. So 2 different sources have articulated a real optimism to me about what Coach Coach Scan, is bringing to the offense.
How so?
Well, just for a lot of what we said, how it looks different, more explosive, getting guys the ball in space. It's a noticeable difference. I know Doug tried to downplay the difference, but you and I have talked about what he's expected to bring from his Kyle Shanahan pedigree. And I just think that when two different people, on the team tell me that they can really tell what he's doing and that it's having a good effect, I think it's worth mentioning.
That's great. Yeah, because the big thing, and Brian Westbrook told us this when we had our ITB TV with him, what Kyle Shanahan's offense does is so good at disguising whether it's going to be a run or a pass play. It's just incredible how well he does it with play action or run action. And that's what Scangarello is going to bring in here. And Rich called plays at Wagner. He called plays last season with Denver. Quite frankly, he would still be the OC, but he had a disagreement with, as I understand, with Vic Fangio, the head coach, and obviously he's no longer there. Pat Shermer's the OC. So this guy's a talented coach. He's experienced. He's been coach at the pro and college levels. He brings a lot of experience and different ideas. Andrew Briner as well, and Marty Morningweg, my goodness gracious, is here. So this is going to be fun. I know it's a shortened off season and no preseason and all that, but it doesn't mean you can't be different. And I expect the offense to have some subtle differences that we've not seen before.
All right, let's go to the defense first. Download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app today and use code ITB for a special offer when you sign up. That's code ITB for a special offer when you sign up only at DraftKings Sportsbook. All right, on to the defense. I'm kind of, chomping at the bit, Adam, for these pads to come on so we can get some good defensive line news, right?
I love when you say that. I used to love going before the 11 CBA when you could have a ton of contact. I used to love the one-on-one drills, the left tackle versus the right defensive end, and how they would go at it and how physical it would be. They still might do it, but they're not going to be as long as they used to be. I just like that stuff. I'm big on, like, when I would go to the Senior Bowl, Geoff, they call it the pit. Guys would go against each other, and it was just that's old school football. I like that stuff. So yeah, they're gonna have it this week and starting today, and we're gonna see Malik Jackson, as you know, who only played the one game and barely played one game because he got hurt.
You mentioned something about him last pod that he's lost some weight or
yeah. Well, he's also light. He might play around 290, but he's in the low 280s, somewhere around there. I don't know the exact number, but he's in great shape, looks good. That rotation's just going to be absurd with Javon Hargrave now in there and Hassan Ridgeway and Anthony Rush, and they're just incredibly deep. And Raekwon Williams, I know they're really excited about. So that's going to be a great thing. Joe Osman come back from ACL reconstruction. He looks good. We had said in the last show, it'll be interesting to see if they keep 5, 6, or they can't keep 7, but whether they keep 5 or 6 defensive ends. That to me, and over the next 2 weeks, we'll get a better idea of who's doing well and who's not. But that will not be easy for the Eagles because with the expanded practice squads, the secret's out on Joe Osman. Other teams know about him. They saw the reporters writing about it. One team told me
they're well aware of him because they don't know how the Eagles got him, because I guess there were other teams that involved with Osman with 2 years ago, whenever the hell it was they first had him. but the Eagles won out getting him. And, if he didn't tear his ACL, we know he was going to be on the team anyway. But it'll be interesting to see what happens here if he's got to make it. I don't see him getting cut.
Well, do you think he and Jannard Avery can both make the team?
Well, you heard Matt Burke in his press briefing talk about it, how Avery brings that speed.
Right.
And he's certainly different than anyone that they have. And that's been the issue, is the lack of athleticism at the end.
Uh-huh.
You put Avery in there. He definitely, by the way, he did say he's playing and not
outside linebacker. There's been some
Right.
speculation, but he's playing in. Barnett, Graham, Curry, Sweater, 4 who are definitely making it.
They're definitely keeping at least 5. Now, here's the question again. Avery, Miller, Osman for 1 or 2 spots.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be fascinated to see, because Miller showed up in pretty good shape in terms of he's built himself in this offseason.
Yeah.
It's the only word I got on him. But you know what?
This
guy's long and he's athletic. He's a little bit raw, but the Eagles, he's another guy, because Graham's getting up there. Curry's on a 1-year deal. You've been pushing for it, and I agree with you. And by the way, Casey Toohill's there. We shouldn't forget about him.
Yeah.
These young kids have got to start getting in the rotation.
I agree with you. I don't know, man. I know I said this last podcast, and some people reacted to it on the Facebook community page, which was cool, because I don't pretend to have the crystal ball here, but cutting Sharif Miller in year 2 when he didn't play at all last year, for not necessarily because he's bad, because they had such a good D-line and because you drafted him in the 4th round. That seems like, I don't know. You don't cut 4th round picks to me. I mean, in year 2, unless they're completely terrible. But as you just mentioned, they're happy with how the shape that he came in this year, and he couldn't play last year to be terrible. So it's just weird. I mean, look, I get it. You have a lot of players at that position, and that's a good problem to have. But we've talked about this team's drafting already, and if you're cutting a 4th round pick in year 2 and he hasn't even played, that to me is a little fishy. But I guess
okay.
You better be right. I guess that's what I mean. You better be correct on who you keep if that's the case.
Before we get to linebacker, I would say this. If Joe Osman looks like he did before the injury, he's not going anywhere with the affinity that the front office and coaches have for this guy.
Mm-hmm. He's not only is he a really good special teams player, you just love having him around there. Just a guy you want on your – he's kind of like Sean Bradley at linebacker. He's going to make the team because he's a special teams player, but he's an incredible locker room guy. The team is in love with Joe Osman, who's just a great find from the 18 draft. But I'd say they keep 6.
No less than 5, obviously. It's either going to be 5 or 6. My
guess would be 6. We'll know over the next 2 weeks. And then, Geoff, at linebacker, you already talked about T.J. Edwards. We kind of know. Yeah. We kind of know, Geoff, that they're going to be a heavy nickel team. They're between 65 and 70% nickel anyway. So it's going to be Gary is going to be a starting nickel linebacker. Mm-hmm. Riley now with the kid who retired, Jatavius Brown, not there, who could have been. So it's going to be Riley, Gary.
Well, I tell you, Adam, 2 people have told me now since the start of camp that they've been impressed with T.J. Edwards coming in and being in even better shape than he was last year. I think he shed a few more pounds, and they told me he's running better than he even did last year. And the one thing we consistently say about Edwards is that, he's a kind of a downhill linebacker. That's what he was at Wisconsin. He lost weight last year just to be NFL ready, but apparently he's got himself even more ready to play, to at least attempt to compete, to be more than just a run down, first down, second down linebacker. And so I'm told he's in the mix for nickel. You mentioned it. You got Gary, you've got Duke Riley. Duke Riley is probably the most athletic of the 3 if you just went on raw athleticism.
Oh, he's a starter with Atlanta. I mean, the guy's first years were good. Then he got benched after that. But Davion Taylor, I don't think even dresses this season. He's just needs to develop his body. And the future
I think Alex
for him
Singleton is a name people should. I think people remember. Okay. Yeah.
Someone actually on our message board on Facebook, folks, get up there because it is smart talk there. I'm there every couple of days. I know Geoff is on there as well. And we had someone who just signed up for the message board on Facebook and asked about Singleton. So go ahead. What do you got on Singleton?
Well, just that he's looked good also so far. And as we've both of us reported, Davion Taylor, as you mentioned, far from being where they need him to be to play defense, maybe special teams. But when you're looking at backup linebackers, you're looking at Alex Singleton, who was on the team last year and played mostly special teams, and a good special teamer. They like him. Kind of a hair on fire type of player. Was very good up in Canada. I think he was Defensive Player of the Year in Canada 2 straight years, and then the Eagles signed him. He was a very good player.
Man, this guy's got to get on the field, man. Our listeners, crush the Eagles linebackers. Okay, I guess we have too. But if this guy's got talent, I mean, he's number 49, kind of an odd number, but he's got to get on the field here. Now, look, right. Davion Taylor was about nickel defense and dime defense. Mm-hmm. That's you're playing nickel in the NFL these days, and Eagles particularly because they're a big nickel team, 65 to 70% of the time. So in year 2, their hope is he'll be one of their starting nickel linebackers. If so, because he can run and he's there to cover linebackers, to cover tight ends. And in today's NFL, man, tight ends dominate.
Right. Someone asked on our Facebook message group if we could see Davion Taylor a couple of years down the road becoming the he said the 3-down dime linebacker. So I think he was insinuating that in 3 years the Eagles are going to be a primarily dime defense and only having one linebacker out there, and it's going to be Davion. I don't know if we'll ever get that. Yeah.
Well, I could say this: he could be if he's who they think he is. Mm-hmm. It was never about year 1 with him. They knew he was a project, but if he becomes that guy in passing situations, which is these days, 55 to 60% of the time teams throw anyway. Mm-hmm. Look, this kid could be a find for them, but you just have to understand what he is, and he's not in year 1. And it's pretty much a linebacker. Nothing new there. I have not heard anything about Dante Olson, who would be a rundown guy anyway.
I did check in on Dante.
Right.
I'm glad I forgot. Just there so far. It's just okay so far. Nothing to write home about, and nothing that makes you think he's going to be like this year's version of TJ Edwards last year. Okay, so but again, the evaluation starts now. The pads are on. Maybe things change, but just nothing really that's really moving the needle with him as far as that. Look, but again, as you mentioned, the backup linebackers are, when you're thinking backup linebackers right now, you're thinking Alex Singleton and you're thinking Sean Bradley, the rookie, because the coaches have liked his development.
But here's my thing before we move to DBs.
Yeah.
Sean Bradley, the word around the league was great kid. It would be great for your locker room. Great special teams player. I couldn't find anyone who said he would be able to play on defense this early. So let me go back to something you put on our show a while back. You'd seem to be pretty convinced that they would add a veteran linebacker. And for goodness sake, with the retirement of Jatavis Brown, Geoff, I can't, for the life of me, I don't know why they haven't signed a veteran linebacker.
That's a good question. And I still think that they're probably going to at some point before the start of the season, maybe not anytime soon, but maybe after the evaluation that we talk about.
Right.
But just to be clear, so if you say it or if I say it, something like, hey, the coaches like what they're seeing out of Sean Bradley, or Alex Singleton in year 2 is ready to take it doesn't mean that they're NFL standard linebacker. It's still in the perspective of we're talking about Eagles linebackers, and it's their weakest
for what they have.
Position. Right. So that's why it's important to say. So both things can be true. Sean Bradley could be impressing the coaches, and he could be in line to be a top backup. But like you're saying, he could also be exploited when he's on the field because he's really not an NFL linebacker, starting linebacker, like someone said to you.
Right. So we'll see how that develops. Let's go to defensive back. The one positive, I haven't got a lot out of this, but I know Sidney Jones looks smooth and healthy.
Okay.
Does it really mean a lot? Look, I got snookered last year for Rasul Douglas.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds familiar.
Because Rasul Douglas was like maybe – one of the best defensive back in OTAs last year. He was definitely one of the top guys. But we know that Rasul Douglas is wildly inconsistent. It's more to the bottom side than the higher side. And then Sidney Jones also had a good offseason last year, so take it for what it is. A lot has been said about him. I'm told he'll be restricted next year, not unrestricted, because the amount of time he spent on NFI at his rookie season of 17. So we'll see. They need him. The Eagles are very thin at corner. It's never about names, folks. It's about how many guys. Depth is not about having 10 people. It's about having players you feel like you can put in there. If you only have 4 guys you like and you have 10 players, you don't have very good depth. So you got to get off numbers, and it's all about – like the Eagles actually have depth at defensive end. They actually have guys who can play. Whereas at corner, Avonte Maddox and Sidney Jones are competing for that spot opposite Darius Slay. The fourth corner is Rasul Douglas, who got benched last season. Craig James is a number 5 corner. Michael Jaquette is an undrafted free agent. Or Jack Jaquette, I believe it is.
Wait, is it Michael or Nate? Because it says Michael on the team roster, right? But I thought when they signed him, we were calling him
Who
Nate.
knows? Was it Max Sheen Giles? Max Sheen Gillis? Max Sheen Giles? No one can get it right. Remember that?
I remember someone once called, I think it was Marty, called him Jean Gilles.
Did it? John Gillis. Well, no one knew. Oh, man. Oh, boy. Yeah. By the way, condolences to Howard Bunt's family. I do want to mention that because I remember he did coach Max Sheen Gillis here. But getting to now I know Roby Coleman is going to be their slot corner. And then LeBlanc is also a backup slot, and you could play safety. I get that. But in terms of outside corners, they just don't have enough, Geoff. That to me is a problem.
No, they don't. And I guess we never really got a clear-cut reason for why they felt the need to cut Trevor Williams. He was
and he's not. This is weird. He has not been signed by anybody.
Yeah, that is strange.
They did it early. I don't know. We'll check into that one. No problem. We'll get there.
Did he try to sneak somebody into the team hotel?
Jeff's referring to a story in Seattle very quickly. A Seahawks undrafted rookie tried to sneak in his girlfriend into the hotel where the players are staying by wearing Seahawks paraphernalia. And he thought that would work. Well, it didn't work. They caught onto it, and that's it. And they cut. Obviously, they cut him. So you got to follow protocols.
You got to call Bobby Valentine next time. To
get with the mustache. Yes, I remember that one. Hey, how about those Phillies? They actually won.
Hey, how about that? This thing is looking. They actually score a lot of runs. It's just the bullpen.
They just don't get a lot of hits. Yeah,
and that too. All right, so let's go on to. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the players that you have information on that may have been missing time. You already said Dillard is back and working with the first team, which is good, by the way. This is a guy who could not afford to be out too long, so that's good. What else do you have?
Yeah, I know Barnett missed some time. I have no idea if he's being rested, if he had a tweak. I think Hargrave might have missed a day. What the bottom line is, the only two guys I know who were not practicing Sunday that I'd heard was Arcega-Whiteside. I have no idea if there's any ailment, if he was just being rested. I have no idea. Okay. And Peters could have been a veteran day. Who the hell knows? Because remember, they're going to be in pads on Monday. But we'll find out this week. We'll know for real if these guys are hurt or not. The Goddard injury threw me for a loop last year because it took me like 3 weeks to find out what the hell happened. There was because again, teams do not have to tell reporters where the guys are hurt because you're going to see on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday if guys not practicing. If they're at practice, they'll say, "Hey, this guy's not practicing," unless the team tells them or the agent tells them. They're probably not going to know what the injury is if the guy's hurt at all. So nothing to worry about that I know of. But this is where the real competition comes, folks, and it's going to be a fun week around the National Football League because players are in pads and there's going to be some hitting.
I'm excited for it. I want to talk about Zach Ertz and the contract. Before we do that, let me just tell everybody, make sure they're checking out phlsportsnation.com. They're our friends and affiliates. They do a great job. They're always enhancing the fan experience, covering all 4 Philly sports teams like nobody else. So make sure you're reading their work and listening to their podcasts as well. You can find them all at phlsportsnation.com. You can find them on Twitter at phlsportsnation, or, again, their website, phlsportsnation.com. For the fan, by the fan, that's their motto, and they do an excellent job. We thank them for being great affiliates of Inside the Birds. And we'll pause real quick for another word from our great sponsors. All right. So, Adam, since we last did a podcast, George Kittle reset the market for tight ends, and then
in a big way. Holy smokes.
Yeah, in a big way. And minutes later, Travis Kelce got another payday.
Isn't that comical? It's like he's waiting. I don't know this, but you have to wonder if Kelce's agents were talking to Jack Becta, the agent for Kittle, who's also, by the way, Jermaine Mayberry's agent.
How about that?
Yeah, but it just I say that because it's just amazing how quickly it got done within minutes. But yeah, look, we had reported back at the Combine, Ertz will not be doing his deal if he does one at all this year until he gets to see, and both sides get to see Kittle's deal. And Kittle's deal is phenomenal. The structure is incredibly good for Kittle. The Niners, for the first time in their history, changed their way that they did it. The structure is completely different. They did what's called an advance guarantee. Typically for those injury guarantees to convert to full guarantees, the player's got to be on the roster on April 1st every year after year one. Well, guess what? They junked that
And it actually, I don't have the exact dates, but I know it fully guarantees the year before instead of the following year.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the way some of the veteran contracts were done in free agency, and I give the Niners credit for finally giving into it, because they've always had that leverage to do it, and they didn't have to do this deal. They could have just tagged Kittle for 2 years, but they have some other players that they wanted to do. So Kittle gets $15 million a year. He resets that tight end market, Geoff, so that, look, Ertz is a phenomenal football player, great in the community. The Eagles love him. He's already the best tight end in Eagles history. But there's no way that he's getting George Kittle's deal. However,
correct.
You see the structure. Let's just say that Zach wants to get $13 million.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we'll just pick that number. So now when you really look at it, they could see how close they can get to Kittle. They see the structure of the guarantees and when it's paid.
Mm-hmm.
And they could do that, and the Eagles have that information. So now they could work off of that, and they could also look at Travis Kelce's deal.
Right.
And they'll go from there. So at least they have something to work off of. Because, Geoff, the crazy thing at tight end is that Gronk's deal from 2010, $10 million a year, stood up to the test of time until Austin Hooper got $10.5 million with Cleveland.
Right.
8 years. 8 years.
Yeah, I'm telling you, running back and tight end contracts are really they're almost like a fascinating study. You know, these running backs who have gotten paid recently over the last few years, like Zeke and Christian McCaffrey and who's the one from the Titans that just Derrick Henry. You know, they're getting these and Gurley got these enormous deals. And then if you go look, DeSean Jackson got similar deals like 10 years ago when he re-signed with the Rams. You remember DeSean Jackson, how good he was? I mean, the running back market was dormant for like a decade. And then these guys all of a sudden started getting paid, and it sounded like a lot of money. But then you went back and looked at those deals from 10 years ago. You're like, wait a minute. They're just catching right back up. So it's good to see tight ends, though, get that
finally,
respect.
And kudos to the Niners and Kittle's agents.
So it's going to be hard, and here's why. We've talked about this for a while.
If you extend Ertz's contract, okay, he's got 2 years left. What do you do with Dallas Goedert, who the Eagles typically try to get the guys early? After the season, he'll play 3 years so they can extend it.
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to pay two tight ends? As you astutely pointed out, the only team that's really done it would be the Patriots with Gronk and Aaron Hernandez. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for different reasons, which we don't need to go into. Everyone knows why.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, Geoff, I don't know how right now you do both tight ends. It's just going to be very, very difficult.
You could do it, but it's going to be hard. It's going to be very, very hard.
Well, you could, Adam, I think, it's hard. But, I mean, theoretically, you could do it because you can, if you're Howie, you can say, look, I'm not paying top dollar to wide. Like most teams are in bed with a wide receiver right now for a lot of money. The Eagles really aren't. Right. I mean, think about how many teams are in bed with a wide. The Giants are paying a truckload to Golden Tate. You've got Dallas paying a truckload to Amari Cooper. Washington doesn't really have a lot of money invested in wide receivers because they only have one decent one. They just found them out last year. But most good teams are in bed for a lot of money at the wide receiver position. But the Eagles are not. And I wonder if Howie can look at it and say, what I'm taking from wide receiver, I can give to tight end because, to be fair, we're a two tight end offense anyway. It would have to be this. Howie and Doug and everybody getting together, like, do the Eagles want to be a 12 personnel offense, not just this year, but also maybe next year and the year after? Or do they want to go back to being an 11 personnel and they really hope that these receivers that they drafted all step up? I don't know if they can guarantee that.
Well, with the personnel they have, if they all work out, the receiver young guys work out over time,
they could do 11 and 12 a lot. They could just flip-flop because if you did bring Ertz back, and he has no guaranteed money after the season, so not like they would cut him, but it's to a situation. If you're Zach Ertz, you want Steve Carrick's agent, you want guaranteed money. You want to make sure those 2 years, 20 and 20, well, actually 21, you want to make sure that 8.25 million is fully guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
And the year after that, it's going to have to be a 2-year structure anyway, no matter what they do after the season.
Sure.
And if you get Goddard extended, they don't have to, but if you do, he's signed through 2021.
It's going to be hard to pay Goddard top dollar. Let's move this forward.
Yeah.
What if Goddard has a breakout season, and you have an extended?
Define breakout season.
What if he finishes the top 10 tight end? He's got 800 yards, 7 touchdowns, averages 12 or 13 yards per catch, which is realistic. Greg Cosell told us he thinks he's a better athlete than Ertz.
Mm-hmm.
And with Ertz Ertz is putting up numbers because he's a great football player. I don't know how you pay both if you don't get Ertz done this season, and try to pay both next year. It's just going to be really hard. Plus,
well, I mean, you have to also there's a third part of that though. Like, how did your wide receivers do? If they didn't do very, if DeSean Jackson didn't stay healthy, and if Jalen Reagor was just okay and not good, and if none of the Hightower, if your wide receivers weren't that good, but as you mentioned, Dallas Goedert's a top 10 tight end, and Zach Ertz is a top 3 tight end, then I think you're all right. You're okay committing to both of those guys because you figure that's going to be your bread and butter going forward.
And it's going to be 12 personnel
for at least 2 years.
Yeah. To answer your question, through 2021, you were absolutely 12 personnel, and that's what you're always dictated by who you have. As long as both are on the roster, they're already telling you what it's going to be.
It's 12 personnel,
right?
And then they're going to be. You could go singly with one of them if you want to do that. You could split Goddard out wide because he's a little bit faster than Ertz. You could play Goddard at X, for goodness sake. So Darren Waller played X last season for the Raiders, believe it or not,
right?
Because they were really light at receiver.
Yeah.
So I look forward to seeing, before we get out of here, just the changes that these coaches are going to bring in, or ideas, as Doug tells his coaches. He likes idea guys, because this thing, if they could just stay healthy and get Alshon back, this is going to looks like something they haven't done before, because they were not as creative the last couple of years, I guess, has been the criticism, but they're going to have all sorts of creativity.
Right. No, they will be. I look forward to seeing that. And obviously we'll have more on that and how everything is coming along when we do our next podcast. It'll drop Thursday morning and we'll be able to give a little bit more insight. So that's going to do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. Big thanks to our producer, Hunter Brody. Make sure you check out his work on YouTube. It's called Sports Talk with Broads. And check out his podcast that he does with former Villanova basketball star Darrell Reynolds. It's called Processed. Also, look for Hunter's work on Twitter at Broads81. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the bird.